Nobody can come camping because the area's closed down. Nobody's coming hunting in the fall because the stuff's burned up and the animals are gone, and no tourists, you know, so we're not making any money. So we decided to shut the store down, and we were going to go online with it. And this was about the time everything started kind of happening with Hammonds over there in Burns. And so here comes January, and we find out what's going on. We heard about the rally and the big event in town that they had to support the Hammonds, and we started watching that on Facebook and YouTube, and I found out that the Bundys were there, and Lavoy Fenicum, and we decided, you know what, maybe this one we need to go see what it's about. And so Sandy had a couple days off. By this time she had started working at the Chevron, and had a couple days off work, so we decided to drive over there. And what, we stayed
a couple nights the first time. Yep. And then drove back, went back to work, and told everybody that we'd be back. I don't know if they believed us or not, but yeah. So I had another day off. A week later. Yep. I had another day off, and we told the town that we were going back if they wanted to donate supplies or anything. So we had food donated, clothing donated,
wool blankets.
Yep.
MREs.
Yeah.
Lighters.
So,
you know.
Yeah. So we went back down there and took all that with us, and stayed a couple more days and left, came back to work again, and we did that 4 times. And the 4th time was kind of was different. We got down there and we noticed that the security was pretty lax, that
just people were coming and going all the time, and you know, some guys were militia, some guys were just from town. I mean, there was families there, and before we had went, you know, with the things that are happening in the government, with, you know, the tyranny, I like to call it, I said to Sandy, you know, where are these cowboys like the John Waynes and the good men that stood up for what was right? And when we got down there, we found those guys, you know, Ammon and Ryan Bundy, Lavoy Fenicum, and we met a different kind of cowboy. I think the 2nd time we were down there. He was Japanese and had long hair. David Fry. You know, and when we were first, I remember seeing David, and I thought, you don't really fit in here with cowboys and stuff. You know, he seemed like a young guy that just would be living life. And we got to talking to him, and I think it was the first time we went down, we had some cell phones, and when we came back, they just started acting weird. Would shut off, turn on, wouldn't do what you wanted, you know, and
camera would be on all on its own.
Yeah, so
strange things started happening. We wouldn't get service, calls wouldn't go through, dropping calls.
Well,
We've never had troubles with our phones before that.
We were sitting around the fire talking about that, and David had kind of heard, and he says, well, you know, who's your provider? And we started talking. Well, he's pretty technical, so he started telling us about the phones, and I think we had AT&T
and the
service.
Provider was Verizon for the area. But our phones were fine while we were down at the refuge the first time, but when we went back is when they were the FBI was able to get into our service provider and take over.
The service?
Well, you told us they do something to your phone, and once you get back to your area, then they're able to get in there and start doing stuff with the phone.
I think they might have set up stingrays.
That's what it was.
A lot of people were coming to me with issues with the phones, like, you know, saying, hey, you know, why is my phone not taking pictures? Like, people would come to me and their videos on their phones would all be black, just nothing there, and then pictures would have all kinds of it'd be scrambled. And I personally, my phone was doing the same thing. Videos just turning all black, pictures being scrambled, and so at that point, you know this isn't a coincidence when everybody's device is doing this. And so they were bringing that up to me, and obviously I can't fix that.
Right.
but that I noticed that.
But it explained what was going on.
Yeah. They were deliberately interfering because they didn't
Right.
want you gathering the information you were gathering.
Right, and
pictures
taking it back and sharing
or if they're just accessing it from the outside, and if that just somehow corrupts your file when they do that, that's another possibility. So I just noticed that it was happening a lot.
So a good old-fashioned camera would have come in handy.
Yeah.
Right. You know, and I noticed later on after, you know, we were arrested and released, we got our discovery, the warrants to access our phones weren't dated until that last 2 weeks. You know, February 6th or 9th, I think they started having, you know, I'm like, so they were doing all that prior to the warrants, which is kind of weird, but little did we know that meeting David Fry and talking about that would eventually lead to saving our lives with the skills he had.
Technical, yeah, skills.
So how long were you there this last time?
We were scheduled to be there 4 days.
3 or 4 days.
Yeah. And it was the night before we were going to leave is when everything went down at the refuge. That morning there was a big meeting in the firehouse, and I remember Sean going to Ryan Payne and was saying that, you know, we need to be more secure on who was coming in and what they were doing while they were there. And
we kind of woke up that day and just had a weird, had a weird gut feeling, and I just don't feel like something's not right, you know. And I talked to Ryan and I said, you know, I think you guys are too relaxed. You know, we were getting reports that the FBI had taken over the airport and they were barricaded, and you know, it was like all protection with fortification, and we're like, you know, they're gearing up for war, and we're just people coming and going. You know, if we believe what we're standing for here, we need to protect ourselves. And then sometimes we would do security with Lavoie, and Ryan had came around later in the day, and he's like, we're fine, you know, we got everybody, the media's here, there's kids here, they're watching us, you know, nothing's gonna happen, we're fine, you know, we're not breaking any laws, which none of us thought we were, but still believe we weren't. And so then they got ready to go to their meeting in John Day to meet the Sheriff Palmer up there, which he invited them, and they come around looking for us to go to security, and Sandy had kind of got sick and had the sniffles and nose running. I
couldn't hardly breathe. My nose was so stuffed up, and
you know, remember this is January, so it's cold, really cold over there. And he goes, why don't you guys set this one out? We'll get some other people to go along, you know. And everything about that day was different, because like when we would go to an event, we'd go in a caravan and we'd stay close to each other so the car couldn't pass and get in between, or we'd get separated. We always prayed before we left and talked about the route and everything. And this time they had different people
who prior to this would never even step foot into the refuge. They refused to come into the refuge. They were supposedly like a buffer zone, and they were staying outside, didn't want anything to do with security or coming into the refuge. They didn't want to be tied to that. Then all of a sudden they were taking over security, and it was going to be their way. That
would be Mark McConnell.
Yeah, yeah, Mark McConnell.
And so he kind of took over the whole trip there, and he had sent a car, go ahead and go, we'll catch up to you. About 10 minutes later, you know, and then the next car went, and it's like they didn't pray before they went.
Like that.
And
it's not the way that we had done it in the past.
Right. I talked to Ryan about it after all this, and he's like, yeah, he said that whole day was different. We didn't pray, we left different, you know, and it was all set up, you know, and we know that now. They didn't know that at the time, but so we were, it was getting dark. We were getting things ready. We took a lot of supplies in with Dwayne Emer, and we'd kind of divvy them up to who needed what, you know, socks here, sleeping bag there, and I think we were getting ready for supper.
Yep, it was 6 o'clock, because that's when they had dinner time, and it was just a few minutes till.
I remember standing in the building, and all of a sudden there was this commotion outside. There was four-wheelers and vehicles driving fast, and people yelling, and we're like, what's going on? And Dwayne came in, and he said they stopped the caravan. And the first news we got was like they'd shot Ryan Bundy. Ryan Payne was dead. Lavoie was shot. They weren't sure if he was dead, and they arrested the rest of them. You know, and we're just like in a panic. Like, what do you mean? This can't be true. And then the word was, now they're coming here to get the rest of us. You know, we had always said we won't fire till fired upon. We weren't there to to hurt anybody or anything, but we had our First Amendment right, our Second Amendment, and because the media made us look like militants and terrorists, you know, everybody had that perception. Oh, they're in camo and they got guns. They're gonna start shooting people. Well, we didn't shoot anybody ever. But then we found out they shot Lavoie and they're coming to kill us. And then people said, "All right, this is serious." So we started getting defensive then. And
how many people were still at the refuge at that point?
Well,
50.
yeah.
At that time, I would say about 30 people. Yeah.
You know,
and they all, of course, are panicking at this point.
Right.
And then you can actually, and since it's nighttime, you can actually see the convoy of vehicles, of all the military vehicles, and they're setting up their equipment. They got the big, huge lights and stuff. So the fear was legitimate. I mean, they're coming. The redcoats are coming.
Yes, that's exactly.
And they
what
already
it was.
murdered people. You know, we thought half of them at this point. So we're like, all right,
Go.
what do you do at this point? Do you give up and let them kill you too, or do you stand and defend yourself? And so we kind of took defensive positions. And I remember Dwayne came in, and Dwayne Emerson said, "I want you guys. I got a spot for you guys."
He goes, "Remember that spot that we set up?" He goes, "I want you to go there and watch to see if they come in and cross there." And it was before the gates. We could see them on the main road before they ever even got close to the refuge.
Yeah.
But we didn't have radio communications, so we were in this spot and we had no way to let people know if we saw anything.
And he kind of thought, you know, I'm going to send you guys here where you'll be safe. You're not at the entrances, you know, husband and wife. He kind of took us under his wing and really looked out for us a lot, you know, and had us in the bunkhouse with him where they had heat when we slept at night, you know, and other people didn't have heat. Sometimes they were sleeping in their trucks or in tents.
Which we did the first several times that we came, because we didn't want to impose, we didn't want to put anybody else out. Yeah, we wanted them to have the comfort.
So here we are at this spot that later turned into Camp Finicum, and it was Sandy and I at first, and there was a big track hole there, and I remember telling her, "I want you to take your gun and a bunch of these magazines and sleeping bag," and I had her get down in between the tracks of the track hole underneath that machine, because I thought that's bulletproof, you know. And I stayed outside and had binoculars and was watching the convoy, and at that point there was headlights going towards town, headlights coming back from town. I mean, lots of traffic like we didn't ever see before, and I'm like, what is going on?
Well, and because we had no radio communication, we didn't know if people from the refuge were leaving and they were making it to a certain point and got, you know, a checkpoint or something and decided to come back in. So we didn't know if people were coming or if they were staying, if they were leaving. We had no clue. We thought, you know, it could have been the FBI coming in.
But when you see, you know, headlights keep coming, not just leaving, we're like, well, we don't know. Well, eventually,
who that is and what,
eventually, it was Carl Brahman come in. I heard a vehicle coming. It was one of those Razor four-wheeler things, and you know, it's dark out. You hear a vehicle coming. I don't know who's coming or what they're coming, what their intent is, you know. And as he got closer, you know, I'm hollering, "Stop! You know, identify yourself!" and flashlight on him. Well, here's Carl, and I brought you some water and some snacks and stuff, you know. And I'm like, "I need a radio." I said, "What's going on?" "Oh, there's chaos. Everybody's here and there." And I said, "I need a radio so I know if they're busting through the front gate or the back gate.
Or we can let you know.
Or so we can let you know there's cars coming." "All right, I'll be right back." And he's just nervous wreck. And from what I understand, Carl had been in Iraq War and the Afghanistan War and actually was in combat. And he had done some training there with people, you know, showing formations and things. And so I was looking at these guys. What do we do? You got training. I don't, you know. And to see him that nervous, I thought, wow, he knows their capabilities and this ain't good. And so he'd left and he was going to come back. And I don't know, an hour or so went by and here comes another vehicle. And he comes back with more water and more snacks. "Where's my radio?" You know.
He's like, "No, I'm sorry, I couldn't get you a radio. There aren't any radios left." And we had no phone service out there at all. Our phone wasn't working. Yep. So we had no way of contacting anybody, finding out what's going on. And we made it through the night. trying to remember what
Well,
time they all came back
that
in.
second time when he went to leave,
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
he was even more nervous of a wreck, and he took off so fast and he turned so sharp that he rolled the machine on top of him. Everything went flying, and I said, you keep lookout, I gotta go help him. And I helped pick it back up, and I think he broke his thumb. He was like, ah. I said, calm down, calm down. I said, you know, they're either gonna kill us or they're not, but first we gotta be calm and rational. And all right, I'll be back. And took off again, and
It was the last
I
time
remember
we saw
thinking,
him.
yeah, I remember thinking, wow, this is bad. And he never, ever came back.
That's a name I'm not real familiar with. I think I've heard it,
He was
but I'm not real familiar.
Bald guy.
So what became of him? He was arrested or not?
No.
No. They apparently were having a big meeting in the bunkhouse that we didn't know about because there's no radio.
Were you there, David? At the
I
bunkhouse?
was at that meeting.
You were at the
I
meeting.
was there at that time, and then there was a guy, I believe his name was Painter, was the nickname he was given. He was telling everybody that, I guess he must have spoke with the FBI or something. He was telling everybody that
Of course he did.
Of course
FBI
he
is saying
did.
to everybody
Wow.
that right now is the time to leave, and that, you know, no one's going to get hurt if they leave. And
How could he have talked to the
a
FBI?
conversation broke out where people didn't trust what he was saying, and so it was kind of like a good chunk of people left with him. They went with him, and he took them out. And then a lot of the people who stayed, obviously, were people who were skeptical about all of that.
That wasn't Painter. That was the guy from Cows, little redheaded guy.
Okay, well,
Was he there?
it's the guy who had the like a little Picasso hat or something.
Yep,
Yeah.
and his daughter.
Okay.
Oh.
Actually, she was with Sherry Duvall doing Rebout News for a while.
Oh, okay. That was okay.
What is his name?
So it wasn't Painter.
No, it wasn't Painter at that time.
Painter.
So
But
obviously,
anyways, so there was that guy who did that, and then there was the people who called themselves the Navy SEALs. They were there at that meeting too.
Really?
And I yeah, they were some of the ones that were causing
Breakage and
dissent, like, or just yeah, there were very
trying
strange
to
people.
separate everybody.
And
Oh.
we found out later that, because that guy's a local Burns resident, and apparently he's got a past drug charges and things. So
Was that the same guy that was
yeah,
at that
and he
meeting?
went by the name Taz.
How did he get in and back out?
And that's what we were wondering. There's these roadblocks set up now, and these guys got in somehow. You know, that didn't make sense to me. Well, daylight comes early morning, and here come David Fry, Jeff Banta, Dwayne Emer, Painter,
There are probably
Fish.
like 12 of us left.
Dylan Anderson.
they came out to the track
Gunner.
home.
They all came out and were like, "What's going on?" And at that point, we had heard
Gunner,
that,
Yeah.
and Gunner, Anthony
Gunner.
Gunner.
Anthony Gunner.
At that point, we'd found out everybody left. They had a big meeting that we didn't even know there was taking a vote.
Yeah. A lot of us didn't know because we were all on lookout without radios.
Right. And so that was the only ones that were left. And I'm like, well, is there anybody at the gates? No, we're all here
Well,
now. And
They're
I'm
all
like,
right there.
so we don't know what's going to happen at the front gate or the back gate. And we're all kind of standing around. And then there was a media guy that showed up. And then about that time is when I think Dwayne and Jason Patrick and those took a end loader down on the bridge, and we set up our barricade so that at least that would stop them, give us time to pray, I guess, you know. And then the media showed up there, so they were still letting people in and out. Barbara Berg was there, and
Well, now, don't ask me. Okay, go ahead, Sean. Where were we at?
so the Navy SEAL Taz, I remember him, you know, gonna get us out of there, and I'm thinking, this guy's no way a Navy SEAL, because he would know that the airspace is shut off. You know, they're not gonna let us drive out. And so he's kind of looking around and, you know, seeing who's who and who might be issues. And I'm pretty passionate about my beliefs and strong-willed. And he came up to me and got in my face and said, "I need you to promise me you won't fire until you're fired upon." And I says, "Well, we did promise that, but that's over with now. They murdered my friend Lavoie, and I need you to promise me." And I said, "So you want me to wait till they get here and get out and get in position and shoot me?" I said, "No, I'm to defend myself and my wife and these other people." and he raised his voice and kind of got in my face, and at that point I remember kind of reaching down and moving my jacket for my handgun because I don't know where this is going to go, who this guy is, and Sandy kind of stepped away and I saw his eyes go like, uh-oh. And then he backed off, and then he said, oh, we got to go do some reconnaissance. And he had Dwayne take him out on the road and then pick him back up, and they're using all this lingo on the walkie-talkies. And then I hear him on the walkie-talkies up in the tower, and they're down in the rooms, and we come to find out later they're in these buildings causing damage. They kicked the door in. The guard tower had like 3 or 4 windows broke out when we were there from over time. After everybody's gone, all the windows are broken out. And I remember the last thing he goes, I got something I got to check, I'll be back. And I'm like, got on the radio and I called for Taz. And I said, I think it's time for you and your partner to leave. You're doing more damage here than help. I said, I think man to man, I want you to leave. And all right, we're out of here.
No, he said something like, I got what I needed, so...
Yeah, I got what I needed, so we're out of here.
Yeah.
They reminded me of looters, is what they kind of suspicion I had about them. There was one building that the boy Finicum was staying at, and that was a closed-off building. It was locked, and all of a sudden, you know, these people are down there by themselves, and it's kicked down, or kicked open, and I don't know what they were in there taking, or if they took anything, I don't know.
Do you think they might have been sent in to make it look like you guys have destroyed a lot of things?
In fact, in our discovery, there's a video or a recording of him talking to, who was our negotiator? Mark. And I recognize Mark's voice on there, and he's talking to him saying, you guys got to back these copters off. It's making people really nervous. Just back them off. Give me 15 minutes and I'll have everybody out of here. So that reinforced my belief that he was part of them. And so they left, and then we had Jason Patrick down at the roadblock, and
wanting to move the...
Yeah, and then they wanted to move the thing to let somebody in, and we're big old argument. I'm on the radio, do not move that roadblock. I mean, we're at this point, we think, or we believe that they killed Lavoie, they shot some other people, they're all in jail for nothing. So it just reinforced our beliefs of how tyrannical they are. And at this point, we're like, no, this is Armageddon, basically. You know, we know what they did in Ruby Ridge and Waco, and you know, Waco, they murdered those people, burned everybody, kids included. So we're like, no, we don't trust anything.
And there's just the 4 of you now?
No, there's still 5 of us. Jake Ryan was still there. And then
Jason
Barbara
Patrick went down to the unloader, and he had a walkie-talkie with him, and then he dropped the walkie-talkie, put it down, and Sean just turned his back on us and started walking down the road. And Sean calls him on the radio, and he says, hey, Jason, where you going? And Jason radios back, I'm going for a walk. And Sean goes, are you coming back?
Had the radio with him.
Yeah.
And he kept going, and I'm like, are you coming back?
Yeah.
Maybe. And then he got a little farther, and then he got out of radio waves.
Static. There was just static
so,
on the radio. Yep.
You know, and we're pretty depressed because now all these people are gone. We knew that Dwayne, we got a text that Dwayne had been arrested. They impounded the horse. That Dylan was arrested. But yet, Painter and Fish left with them in the same place, got stopped, but they got released. And then they ended up at the Bundy Ranch, you know, and you think back on this, and it's like, you know, what's going on? And
Jet boat. Yeah.
You know, how do some get arrested and some don't?
Very cool.
And
yeah. What was the criteria of picking and choosing? Didn't make any sense. That some were allowed to.
We found out Jason Patrick had negotiated with Idaho 3%, Brandon Curtis and PPN, and they were going to get they were negotiated with the FBI for his release. So he walked that road past the Narrows for, I don't know, 5 miles or something, and got down there, and PPN picked him up, drove him to the roadblock, they arrested him, and he stayed in jail. So then we were hearing all this stuff, and we're like, no, they're not going to let us go, they're going to arrest us. So now we have no choice but to stay for sure. And
so I wasn't planning on leaving because I was the last person that had any idea how to work cameras and stuff. And I'm always, you know, history looking, you know, government's not accountable, they will do some shady stuff, just like they did with Lavoie, you know, picking up the shell casings. If nobody was there to see it, or there was no cameras there to see it, that would have been, you know, they would have got away with it. So I wanted to make sure that those cameras were running all the time. And that's why I stayed. And as long as, if somebody was staying, I was going to stay. I was going to make sure it's going to get all known for the world, as, you know, they can see it and make it reported. Documented, yeah.
You know, and the weird part was, not only were we supposed to be in that convoy, but because she was sick, we didn't go. David was supposed to be in that convoy as well, to be the media guy at John Day. And
I was fixing someone's computer, and the boy had texted me and asked, you know, if I wanted to go to this meeting, and I never responded back. I didn't even notice the message until later, and then by that point, it was already too late.
Wow. Yeah.
So you look back how this all worked out.
That God put us all where we were supposed to be.
So then Barbara Berg was staying at the Narrows in Ammon's trailer, I guess. Well, then they set the roadblock up. Nobody could get out because we were the last ones. And she was allowed to come up to our roadblock and then actually come in and go back and forth. And we thought, well, that's kind of weird. Well, she came in and sat with us at night during the fire and was talking to us. And, you know, David, you're a young man. You got all these skills. You know, you should
share it with the world.
Share it with the world. You should leave, you know. And they're just going to hold you for a little bit and then release you. And then Jake, you know, you're a young guy, and, you know, you guys should leave. And then Sandy, and she's like, I'm not leaving because that's my husband, and he can't leave without being arrested, and we don't know why. Well, that brings me back, I think, because Taz had reported that this man's going to stand. So they had to arrest me, you know. This is going to be our problem. And then I feel kind of responsible that because she didn't leave, and then they didn't want to leave because she wouldn't leave, and to protect me when I'm, you know, I could have been the only one arrested.
Well, it just didn't make any sense, and they wouldn't tell us what you were being arrested for, what you were charged with. And if it was for trespassing, we all stayed there. So if they're charging you with trespassing, why weren't they charging all of us with trespassing? It was just a bunch of baloney. But I think some of it had to do with what you had said on the video too.
Well, we made the video of, because when we were getting text messages from some people from Idaho 3%. April Royce.
Which you found out wasn't a real name.
The militias are coming. You guys stand tight. We're coming to get you out. We got a convoy coming, and I'm thinking.
But it would take a day or two to get there. Just hold tight. So we decided to stay because we heard that, you know, militias were coming from South Carolina and other Texas,
Tennessee, Michigan.
That they were coming from all over the country, and of course, I mean, they couldn't make it there in just a couple hours, so we were going to hold tight until they got there. Well, then it was the evening, and we had gotten a text saying that the militia's here, they're in town, and then we get another text, they're closer, they're at the checkpoints right now, and they're not letting them in, and there's shots fired, and the militia is taking shots. Somebody in the militia had been shot in the arm, and so, I mean, we're getting this information.
We actually got this, what do you do when you screenshot something? Sent that as a text. And I remember the guy's name was John Parker. Now, thinking back, you know, was that a militia name or, you know. And he was the one that sent her a text that they were taking fire at the roadblock and he had been hit. It was a flesh wound. Well, at this time, we heard gunshots off in the distance. Hey. This is America finally standing up for the Hammonds. They're not going to let the government.
We finally had some hope that they were
Sheriff
here.
Ward, and so.
And that all turned out to be a lie.
It was all a lie.
It was people that were informants trying to drum up more charges on us. So I go over to the live stream camera that David has, and I'm like, you know,
they're here.
They're coming, militia. You guys are here. And I said, if they try to stop you at that roadblock, these law enforcement swore an oath to the Constitution. If they try to stop you, I said, kill them. Because at this point, we're at war with the enemy, you know what I mean?
They're already shooting at you. You're at a roadblock, and they're already shooting at you.
Americans shooting Americans, you know, we're not the bad people. And so that later came back to bite me, but when you're being fed that as false information, it's a setup. We still have those
texts on the phones, too.
Right, so at this point, we're like, we can't trust a lot of people that were here. And we found out later there's, you know, at least 15 informants involved in all of this. Anyway, so then Barbara's talking, and we all kind of convinced Jake, because he's like, I don't want to leave. I don't want to leave you guys. You know, we need to stand for what's right. And we said, you know, you're a young guy. You can have a family and be married and have children and tell our story. I said, you know, we're not going to hate you if you leave. You know, we're committed to this, but go with your family. You know, you got brothers and stuff, and Barbara was working on him, and so he agreed to leave.
Well, and they weren't going to arrest him.
Right, supposedly they weren't going to arrest him.
The agreement was that, and he said, you know, if I'm not going to be arrested, I will go.
And he's in prison now.
And he's in prison right now.
So he wanted to get a bunch of guns, and he took them in her car, and they ended up at the Narrows in Ammon's trailer. He wanted to leave them there to come back later and get his possessions. And right after she dropped him off at the roadblock, which she didn't get arrested, she was still coming and going. And we look back now, we know why, but right after that, they raided Ammon's trailer in the Narrows and took the guns and everything. Yet she was still allowed to be there. You know, like, well, you know, but
That's
back
still
then
where
you're
she
so
was
freaked
staying.
out, you know, and
Don't always put two and two together.
no, and you know, the dots make sense now, but anyway, so he had left, and he texted us a few times after that. They held him for hours at the checkpoint. I don't think he had an ID on or something, and I don't know if they strip searched him, but they made him walk for a long ways with his hands up and turn around and lift his shirt and interrogating him, and they finally let him go.
Yeah, they
but
let
then
him go. They did let him go.
Ended up having arrest warrants later for why, I don't know, you know.
And was that while we were still in the refuge, or was that
Yeah.
I think we were in jail. I think you were in jail, because that's when, because he hid out for a while.
He hid out,
they promised that he would not be arrested for any of this.
And he's got 3 years, 2 or 3 years of jail time right
Mm-hmm.
now. So it's everything they tell you is a lie, complete lie.
Don't believe
And
anything.
he's been through the worst diesel therapy.
Yes, he has.
They punish you by moving you around, and nobody can contact you. You can't
Mm-hmm.
get mail.
His mother's been frantic.
Our government is the people. Well, hopefully the new administration isn't any different. Hold on. But the last one was not for the people, and you know, we're the people that want to be free and have liberty, and that's what drove us to be there. And
yeah, so tell why Jake's in jail. What he was accused of with that trench.
well, because after trial, well, you know, the first trial everyone's acquitted, and wow, you know, those were kind of the big shots. We're in the second trial. We shouldn't even have a trial. They're acquitted. We should all be acquitted. You know, oh no. We waited months to find out if they're going to retry us, and then not only are we going to retry you, but we're adding charges, because they can just add charges whenever. And we're like, what charges? Well, now we're going to get charged with trespass. The first trial didn't get trespass, but the second one's going to, because trespass is a misdemeanor, a petty crime, so you don't get
a jury trial.
Chance for a jury trial, because the Supreme Court ruled in 1950 that petty crimes don't deserve a jury trial. Well, listening to the first trial, Anna Brown, the judge, said to people, well, you at least, at the minimum, trespassed. We got pictures of you in the chairs, sleeping in the buildings. That's trespass. So we knew we're for sure going to get charged with trespass. The jury's probably going to acquit us like they did the last group, but we're still going to get trespass, which was, I think, 6 months maximum sentence in jail and like a $6,000 fine, and you could have up to 3 years probation after that. That ain't petty to me.
Yeah.
So we know, okay, the government lost the first time, they're not losing the second time. They have all the money, all the resources, and we're just, you know, what do you do? And they just keep changing it around to bust you.
So you didn't get a jury trial?
Well, they did, but
not for that.
2 weeks.
Not for that charge. That charge, the trespass charge, the judge
got the rules of bench.
She got to decide whether we were guilty or not guilty.
At the same time as the other trial. So is she paying attention, or is she looking at ways to nail you? You know what I mean? So 2 weeks before trial, my attorney calls me, and in the beginning, I told him no deals. We didn't break any laws. We didn't do anything wrong. There's nothing to deal to. No pleas. And at that time, you know, Ryan Payne had pled guilty, and a bunch of the younger guys that had gotten arrested later pled guilty, and to all this conspiracy stuff. You know, they just threaten and intimidate you to where you're going to be in jail for the rest of your life unless you take this deal. Plead guilty to something you didn't do, and then you can get out in a few years. You'll be a felon, never have your rights back. We're like, no, we knew we were innocent, and so we weren't going to take a deal. And 2 weeks before trial, my attorney calls. He goes, just hear me out. Don't say anything, just hear me out. And he tells me that they're offering to give Sandy and I, drop all the charges, the conspiracy, the 5-year minimum, all this, you know, that we're looking at jail time. Going to drop all that. Even though we're terrorists, they're going to drop that. Charges with a misdemeanor for trespass. We'll get 2 years probation to each and $2,000 fine.
And none of our weapons back.
And none of our weapons back. And I said, well, so we were bad terrorists that they want to put in jail forever, but now they're going to release us with a misdemeanor for trespass. They just got to have something on you. And I said, well, we've already done 1 year of pretrial release, which is like probation. And he goes, well, you know, when you were there the last 2 weeks, they repeatedly asked you to leave and you guys didn't leave. And he goes, you know, you can see that, right? And I go, I can. However, Article 1, Section 8, Paragraph 17, the government cannot own land. How can we trespass on land that is our land? So I'm kind of arguing with him on that. He goes, I know. That's another fight. That was the original fight, from what I understand.
Adverse possession.
We want adverse possession, a trespass charge, and if they would have just done that, we could have fought this out in court. Nobody would have been dead, but our government wants to kill people because they don't want you to have any control or ever win. And
Or to teach others.
or teach others. You got to kill that virus, you know. And so I says, well, I'll talk to Sandy. We're going to pray to God about it. And we gave it the Gideon test. And we said, you know, what do you want us to do, God? I mean, he's been directing us through this the whole time. And we came up with, all right, we'll accept that we didn't leave when we were told to leave. It's a misdemeanor, so we'll have our rights back. But we'll accept 1 year probation, and it was supposed to be bench probation where they don't even really check on you. You got to check in every month. Not a big deal. And we'll pay $1,000 fine apiece because we know that we got to, if you're going to deal or negotiate, you got to give them something. And I said, and then I want my weapons back. Oh, I don't know if we can do that. I'm like, well, it's a misdemeanor. I'm not a felon. Why can't I have my weapons back? Well, because they're part of the crime. I'm like, the crime of a misdemeanor trespass? I mean, it's my Second Amendment right. And so we ended up negotiating. I got one gun to pick, get that back. They accepted the other things we wanted, the 1 year probation and the fine. But it took them a long time to get back. And I'm like, we're running out of time. We're starting to pack to move to Portland for trial. And so we gave it the Gideon test
again. Prayed to God again and said, you know, Lord, if this is what you want us to do, let the answer come back, the official answer that they accept the offer or don't by this evening. And if not, then we know that you want us to go to court, that there's something that you want us to bring.
Keep fighting.
Yep, to keep fighting it that way. And so my lawyer called that morning, or actually that afternoon, and he says, well, we still haven't heard yet whether they accepted your offer. And I said, well, we've decided that if we don't hear by the end of tonight, that this is what the Lord wants us to do, is to just continue with the court trial.
Some reason they don't want us in trial.
Back, yeah, there's some reason they don't want us into the courtroom, but you know, if we don't hear by tonight, then we're going through with it. And he called me back 20 minutes later, and he said it's a deal. They accepted it.
And Dylan Anderson also got that deal, and they offered it to Daryl Thorne, and we actually begged our attorneys and the federal prosecutor that was trying to help the deal, give it to Jake Ryan. He deserves that deal.
Yeah, because they promised, they swore up and down that he would not be arrested. You know, he's
and actually wasn't it
facing all this.
Who was the, I can't even remember. It wasn't Barrows. It was the other guy, but Gabriel. And our attorneys are like, he's really pushing hard for that. He wants to help you guys. You know, he knows you're not.
Which was, yeah, it was very.
And he goes, he's pushing for Jake too, and he agrees. But the problem with Jake not getting the deal is the Paiutes were pushing the issue because he dug the trench, and there's sacred ground where that 500 pair phone cable already was.
Yeah.
So they had the Paiutes push that, why he couldn't get the deal. You know, The Paiutes could have came out and helped us, could have stood with us. We were protecting their artifacts, but you know, oh, because you stole the land from us 200 years ago, you know. So Jake's still in jail. Daryl got with Jason Patrick, and they wanted to fight it with this adverse possession, and he said, nope, no deals. And Daryl's still in jail too, and we knew that judge was not going to let any of us off on trespass. We knew that we're guilty of trespass. If we go in that courtroom with her, we knew it. So we accepted that deal. I can still carry my firearms. We can still vote. But now we're off probation. We're clear, which well, we should have been like them.
And you're having a reunion party.
And this is our reunion party. We got to get this guy in here to say something.
Yeah, we want to hear your story a little bit now, David. How did you learn about the refuge, and why did you come?
So like a lot of people, I watched what happened at the Bundy Ranch, and since then I subscribed to Lavoy Finicum's YouTube channel, and I'd be watching his videos, and next thing you know, he's out there. And I remember one video he was talking about how he was very upset about how they're treating that rancher out there, Hammond. And I think it was like maybe a video or later, he's out there in Burns, and he's calling for people to come out there to, you know, help partake in this protest. And I was like, at that point, you know, understanding how things have been going on in this country with the tyranny, the law enforcement's become so unjust, just the corruption's absolutely outrageous. And so at one point, you know, we do have to band together and make a stand. And so I saw this as an opportunity for America to hopefully, you know, put their foot down, make a change. But so I went out there, and like the rest of everybody that was out there, went out. I try to find out what's going on, you know, talking to all these people. Of course, the media saying they're all a bunch of white supremacists and stuff like that.
You're Al-Qaeda. You're Al-Qaeda.
Yeah, Al-Qaeda, whatever, jihadis. And I'm talking to, you know, Lavoy, and there's Ammon. I'm talking to all these people, and they're completely normal people. There's nothing wrong with them. I trust them. I don't have to worry about them stealing from me or anything like that. And I
they
understand
don't drink alcohol
point,
or. You know.
Yeah, there's an obvious media war going on now, because, you know, media is saying completely the opposite of what they really are. And so I go out there, you know, and it was the night I got there, is the day after, is when I met Lavoy, and he asked me if I knew about computers and whatnot, and I said, well, I know some. And well, he was ecstatic about it, and he's like, well, I need you to help me. And they wanted me to, you know, plug in all their computers and stuff that they had unplugged in the media house, they called it, because when they first went in there, they were so paranoid that the government would be watching them, so they unplugged everything. All the cords, everything was unplugged. And so he wanted to see if I can, you know, plug some of that back in and get the internet back up running. But at that point, I did get it plugged up, but they had already cut the service, whatnot, so there was no internet service. But he had me doing some of his video work and whatnot too. So I go out there and I helped out as much as I can, you know, hoping and praying that Americans would come, all take a stand. You know, at this point, that's what's going to be needed to make a change in this country anymore. I lost hope in voting, so I saw that as our way out.
Do you think if hundreds more would have come, it would have had a different outcome?
Absolutely.
Absolutely. Yep. Absolutely.
Yes.
Look at the Bundy Ranch. They had to stand down.
I mean, it's not to say that they're not going to come after you years later.
Yeah.
But once you get that snowball rolling, you got to go with it and really get rid of these people in power that shouldn't be there. They should be behind bars.
And the militias all said stand down, PPN stand down.
Yeah, and
it's ridiculous.
One of the biggest things, you know, what I think caused a lot of people to stay as long as they did, you know, after Lavoy and all that was killed, or murdered, I should say, is that gosh, I just lost it. Well, I just had a complete brain fart. That's terrible.
Like the
It
way
happens.
the people came together, the good people, that solid people. I mean, like, these ranchers are just protecting their property. And everybody was excited from the Bundy Ranch that, you know, hey, we won. We stood up for what was right, followed the Constitution, followed God, and it worked. You know, little do they know 2 years later they're going to all be arrested and incarcerated and beat up and thrown away.
Abused.
And it still worked.
And they still
They
won.
won.
Yeah, but anywho's, you know, it's what's going to take. This country it's going to take a lot of people to get together and to make that change. But
Were you thinking of that quote from Lavoie about integrity? Okay. I thought maybe that's what you were trying to remember there.
I was going to say is, you know, gosh, I just keep wanting to say something. It just keeps blocking it.
That's because we've got so much to say that
Yeah, it's just that there's
maybe the FBI is mind controlling you.
maybe.
That's coming too.
He was worried about that
very
one
bad
too,
brain
because he was
fart.
on the
Well,
phone the
I've
whole
heard-
time.
In visiting this weekend, I've heard a couple times people talking about intestinal fortitude,
Yeah.
and I think that's what Flip was saying that Lavoie had said to him.
Yep. You have
We need
intestinal
to have
fortitude.
intestinal fortitude to stand and to.
That's
Because
embarrassing, really.
Courage
Not that
is
bad. It's that bad.
being afraid, but still standing.
Right.
You know, we were all afraid,
Oh,
and
Courage doesn't mean you're not afraid.
no,
Right,
but you
yeah.
still stand and
You
you.
do what you have to
but
do.
you still have to do what is right.
I mean, how many of you thought that someday in your life, your own government, own Americans will take your freedoms away from you and be killing you because you want to be free? I mean, I would have never grown up dreamed that. Because
you want to keep your property that's been
Right.
in your family for 100 or more
yeah,
years.
your property, your cows, your livelihood, you know, and because their devious ways, they want the uranium in your land, and it's not their land, but yet they can sell it and make money on it. That's not how this country is supposed to be. And
Yeah, if it's public land and they make money on it, shouldn't that be the public's money?
exactly. But you know, and we tried telling everybody from the Hammond standpoint, uranium won, Hillary Clinton, and I remember people saying, oh, you guys are nuts. What a conspiracy theory. Well, guess what? We look back and it's exactly what we were saying. And
Thanks.
you know,
I was going to say, I remember, just thank you. Okay, so I was talking about why people stayed. So it was Oath Keepers. The Oath Keepers had put out a video or a blog post saying that, you know, if they were to pull a Waco on us, that they would step in and that they would, you know, there would be a lot of people stepping in. And then PPN said that they would be the buffer zone. You know, they won't let them come and kill us and all that stuff.
no free
Well,
Wacos.
obviously, a lot of people stayed because they believed that that was what was going to happen, and it didn't. They turns out.
And then when it came down to time that it was going to become a Waco, they said stand down, stand down.
Yep.
Yeah.
So they backed
Yeah.
off of their word.
Yeah.
You know, a man was killed,
Right.
and now they're tucking tail. They're taking back everything they ever said. You know, they acted like big macho people, putting it out there for the world to see that they would step in if the government came to try to kill us,
Yep.
and they backed off.
And then they said stand down.
Well,
And
that's-
so they helped also create a lot of that issues by, you know, making those statements. And you don't make statements like that if you don't
If you're
really
not
mean
going
it.
to back
Not
them
gonna back
up.
Right.
matters how you stand.
So
Yeah.
a lot of people have lost faith in the 3%ers and the PPN and these,
Well, the head guys are infiltrated, or they
Yeah.
are informants themselves. The government knows there's a movement out there that's going to stand against their power, so they're smart enough to know that we got to get somebody in there so we know what they're up to, what they're doing, and they're all infiltrated. So you join these groups, you know, they're out there. Hey, we're constitutional militia. We have this right by the Constitution, so they're out there having picnics and doing training and being open because they're not breaking any laws.
Right.
Well, guess what? They put people in there so that they can find out what you're doing and charge you and set you up, and that's what they did. They put a big show-off force so they could get other hardcore militias that would actually be there to show up, and then they could be arrested and taken out of the picture. So,
One thing I've noticed is, you know, a tactic that the government always uses is you take out somebody and the rest of the group will scatter, right? I mean, that's a known tactic, and they use it. They plan this stuff out all the time, and we as people, you know, we shouldn't be getting scared. We should be getting very upset, and I find it very a problem that when the conservative side, for you know, the more Republican side, you know, when one of theirs get killed, they don't really go out and make a stand and get upset that as the left do. You know, you see the Black Lives Matter, they are, you know, I don't agree with what they do, going around burning and all that, but they do get together and they get upset.
They make their point.
And they make a point. But why can't the right side do that? It seems they just kill us off, and we it's like we have more to lose, and so we don't put ourselves in that danger. Because we have, you know, jobs, which a lot of them don't, and you know, we have good families, good lifestyle, and we don't want to risk that. And that's the problem. Why we have these issues is people don't want to put out and take that risk.
Well,
and I've noticed that.
Fathers did, though.
There's more of them that are maybe closer to desperation. You know, it's scary to lose your home and your cars, and I mean, we had a lot of supporters that, oh, I just can't come there to support you because I have a job. Well, we had jobs, but we left those because this was so important, you know, or I have young kids. We have kids, but we want to leave our kids freedom and liberty, and if we don't stand, you know, what are they going to have? So it's that important to us.
The founding fathers gave up a lot.
They lost their children, their
Everything.
fortunes,
Lives, their fortunes.
everything.
Put up a lot of money up.
For people like us that they didn't know or have a clue who we'd be.
David, what did you face then in trial and charges and all that sort of thing? The same as these two?
So at trial, they tried to get me to take the plea deal of that they would release me for pre-trial release, and that they would give me the conspiracy to impede charge, and they would drop the other charge, which was conspiracy
Firearm.
or with a firearm, in, you know, having a firearm.
To commit a federal crime or something.
And that's a 5-year minimum.
That was a
sentence.
5-year minimum, yes. And
a
so
felon.
I didn't take any deals. Obviously, I mean, I went through the whole thing, but that charge later on, you know, the lawyers do their thing and argue, and that charge got dropped. And I think I was just the conspiracy charge that they were doing on me, and maybe one more. I can't remember at this point. It's getting foggy, but yeah, obviously the jury saw that it was all BS, you know, this whole conspiracy crap, and they said not guilty.
So you were in the trial where everyone was acquitted then?
I was in the trial with the Bundys, and I got to see a lot of, you know, that's the interesting thing is when people see trials, you know, you don't really know the nitty-gritty details of what behind the scenes, you know, what evidence is allowed to be, you know, introduced, things like that. This stuff the jury never gets to see, and so there's so much stuff that all of us, you know, wanted to present, but the judge would block it as evidence, or you know, we couldn't call witnesses.
Stuff that would make you be innocent.
Right.
Absolutely.
You can't show that because then we won't have a case. You'll be free to go.
That's what I
we
saw
can't
in
allow
the Nevada
that.
trials as
Yeah.
well.
So I see a lot of that, and then of course at the very end, you know, when we finally win, they get upset and they attack Ammon's lawyer,
Yeah.
taser him and tackle him to the ground, you know, and that's like their final kind of like FU.
And keep Ammon in custody to take him to Nevada when they didn't have the proper paperwork for that. That's what his attorney was fighting for.
And then another thing I realized since that trial is the jury does not have the ultimate say. Because when I was found not guilty by the jury, I wasn't free to go. The government still wanted their last say and fill out paperwork, and so they wanted to hold me for another, I think it was like 6 or 7 hours. After I was found not guilty,
You can't just walk out.
I can't just walk. I should have been able to walk through that
Right
door.
there.
So
Right then and
what
there.
do? They take me to the back room and they attack me. Because I didn't want to be handcuffed. I was like, I'm not guilty. Why do I need to be handcuffed?
Exactly.
And I refused, and they attacked me to the ground, and then they forced the cuffs on me.
Really?
Treated me still as a
As a
completely
criminal.
guilty person.
Because
right?
we're going to have control over you no matter what.
So I've noticed a lot of that.
You're lucky they didn't add some charges while you were back there and then keep you in.
Resisting arrest.
Right, yeah, resisting or something.
But you weren't
Yeah.
being arrested. Yeah.
But I wasn't being arrested. Yeah, that's what they'll do.
Then
But
I think everybody, hopefully in the Patriot community, would have come together and
I doubt
stood.
it. But I mean, what message does this send when we beat the government, they're mad, so they taser the attorney that got these people off, or one of the attorneys. A lot of them were all in part of that, but that makes the attorneys go, whoa. That's like sending a message to these attorneys. You better not free your clients, or there's going to be a I mean, that's how bad the government has gotten, where they have to win at all costs. And they're just men and women like we are. They're Americans that grew up in the same country with the same freedoms. Why do they want to be tyrants?
Well, you know, down in Nevada, all the charges, the indictment was dropped. So how come there's still men in prison over that indictment?
Right.
How can that be?
Yes. Yep.
And
They should all be vacated.
and the
all
crookedness of the prosecution. I mean, Meyer, however you say his name, has been busted for that before. Got busted in this line, covering up, cheating and stealing.
Why is he not in jail?
He's not in jail.
Yeah.
You know, he's not even charged with anything.
No.
He might be.
He better be. And you know, it's because that happens and nothing happens, the people just quit giving up. That's where we got to stand and fight and say, no, we demand that they're in jail. They broke the law. We break the law, we go to jail. But they don't. Hillary Clinton's walking around free. All these people in the swamp.
And that's what Todd Engel's attorney now is working toward. He wants to depose Wooten, who exposed the corruption within the BLM at the Bundy Ranch stand-up and prior, and feels that deposition could lead to the deposition of Myrie and others involved in that corruption.
And
wouldn't that be? So they need those donations.
Right.
You know, for the attorney to get in and make those filings, I guess they're expensive to file those things.
And isn't there laws to protect whistleblowers? And I mean, somebody's going to show the corruption. They ought to be able to come right out, say it, and then indict these people for that. There shouldn't be. There wasn't no investigation on us. We got arrested, indicted, thrown in jail.
Right.
And you're innocent until proven guilty, but yet we're going to hold you in a cell like you're guilty
until we do the investigation.
Yeah.
And so meanwhile, while they do this, you're riding behind bars, and you know this investigation going on with Hillary. You know she's
free to go.
running around, doing her things.
Yeah.
There's that other guy, Danny Love. You guys know about him. You know, BLM agent, committed all kinds of crimes. He was actually fired because of what he's done, but he was not put in jail, even though he's stealing evidence, giving it away as bribes, and it's again, it's a two-tier system in this country, and that's what people are getting fed up about. And if our justice system isn't going to, you know, dish out justice, then ultimately the people will feel like it's going to be in their hands. You know, JFK said, if you don't let, you know, peaceful revolution or whatnot, then it'll become violence is inevitable or something. You know, and they're denying us, you know, non-violent resolutions to all these problems.
Exactly.
You know? Grievances aren't being addressed. You know, we're not even going to listen to you complain. We don't even give a crap. And then that just infuriates people.
And that's what led to the adverse possession of the mail here. Alan went up there for redress of grievances. Nobody cared. Nobody would listen to him. They didn't accept his paperwork, whatever.
So if they would follow the Constitution like we did, we would have avoided all that. But they can't do that because they don't have the power they want. We broke away from England because we didn't want the king ruling us anymore. America, we have the same thing right now. This elite class is the king ruling over the peasants. And if you don't see that, and I know you do, but you're afraid, you're scared, it's only going to get worse.
The federal government is very good at escalating problems.
Yes.
Even at the refuge, you know, when we're talking to these negotiators, the day that they told me they're going to cut my phone off, they tell me to go find a package. Cocaine, it looks like a cocaine package.
Package a kilo.
That inside the excavator, and it's a phone in there. He's like, go find it, it's a cocaine-looking package. I'm thinking, you know, what the hell does a cocaine package look like?
What does that look like?
So I find this thing, you know, obviously, but they don't really help the issue. When I did find that package, I was talking to the FBI woman, and she would feed your paranoia. she tells me one time, she's like, David, you know, talking about, you know, how dangerous this situation. You saw how close they were to you. Talking about the FBI agents.
Right.
You saw how close they are to you. Trying to get me scared, you know.
Right.
Not helping the problem, making it worse.
Mm-hmm.
Paranoia now going crazy. They're flying this little remote control drone over our heads, really close, making all kinds of noise, you know.
Hoping that we'd shoot.
Getting us all riled up.
Hoping that we'd be the first ones to fire.
And
yeah, when they came in on us that night and it started getting dark and they were flashing their lights and hoping that we would assume it was, you know, from their...
A muzzle flash.
Yeah, a muzzle flash, and that we'd fire back.
And they could kill us. And then they would have avoided the trials.
Yeah.
Well, they just escalate the problem.
Yeah,
they at
did.
one point told us, you know, we have ranchers out there that need to irrigate their water or whatever, and they need to open up some gate. And we're like,
in
It's
the
the
first
middle of
part of
winter.
February,
It's the middle of
everything's
winter.
frozen.
Yeah.
right, well, we're like, yeah, go on ahead, come on. But
They
he's
never-
like, we gotta bring people with us, you know, for their protection. And we're like,
The ranchers are
bring
afraid
it
of
on,
you.
have fun, we'll let you go through. You don't have
Yeah,
anything
you
to
never
worry about
denied
us.
anybody
No.
access to anything.
The ranchers are
Didn't
afraid of
deny
you.
them.
And I'm like, no, they're not.
No.
We're here defending the ranchers.
We were scared, so we did ask, you know, this isn't some kind of like setup, is it? You know, you're not gonna come and attack us. And we were just
Right.
asking. And he's like, no, if we were going to attack you,
Okay, here we are at the campground again.
Spring Bar.
Spring Bar Campground on the beautiful Salmon River near Riggins, Idaho. And I'm here with Sean and Sandy Anderson and David Fry. 3 of the final 4 from the Malheur Refuge. And they're going to tell us their story. Sean, go ahead.
Well, moved to Riggins about 4 years ago from Wisconsin. And prior to that, we had heard about the Bundy standoff, and we were so far away we just weren't able to make that. But it sparked my attention on what was going on with the country and how the government was being intrusive. And while we were here, we had a outdoor store that we opened up called Hurricane Outdoor Supply. It was camping and hunting and hiking and supplies for that, you know. And we opened that in April. And in August, there was a lightning strike about 20 miles south of the town we live in, Riggins, and it hit a tree. And the Forest Service went up there, and they couldn't really, like, it was getting dark and they really couldn't put it out apparently. So they put some fire retardant stuff around the tree, and they were going to come back in the daylight. Well, meanwhile, it burned it enough that the tree fell and rolled down the hill, caught everything on fire. And in August, when this happened, we had only been open since April, it had got to the town, which was 20 miles from where the fire had started, and like hundreds of thousands of acres burned. And the town was being close to evacuation because it was so smoky. I mean, you couldn't hardly see across the street, you know, and you're breathing all that smoke, and you could see the fire up on the hill behind us, you know, just blazing over the top of the mountain. And so now